Yeah, this one's important to me. I've been giving a lot of thought to this topic, which is about, one of the ways I see it is that truth is a struggle and secrets are a burden. I have presented Pellin what I'm now experimenting in calling contribution theory and training as robust, detailed, and accurate. These are clear and practical tools that can provide useful and solid solutions. Useful and solid is a phrase I want to use again and refer back to. Today, we are looking at this new work that I'm calling Tools for Truth. This is a work in progress. That title, Tools for Truth, I think is a bit off. It might not be the best script line. Also, the work is a new formulation, not new in the sense that my work on decisions is new. Transparency, script lines, and straight messages have been in Pellin and in contribution theory and training for a long time. We have explored each of them thoroughly here at the forum. However, today, I want to bring them together in a slightly new way. Here it is. Sorry, I got myself lost there. How these tools affect and can provide solutions to how we are in the world. In other words, I'm looking at the large part of us that is determined by how we are perceived in the world. What are the implications of other people's perceptions of us? I guess that's the bit I'm looking at here. What are the implications of other people's perceptions of us? And this goes back very fundamentally to David Pellin's concept of self-identity, which in my view is very original. Original in the sense that he stated it in a way that I don't believe it's been stated as clearly elsewhere. But on the other hand, there's nothing new under the sun. So what self-identity is addressing, which essentially is how other people perceive us and how other people's perceptions of us in some fundamental way determines who we are. I mean, that part of life has been around all the time. How other polar bears perceive a polar bear determines a great deal of who that polar bear is. How other people perceive us determines a great deal of who we are. You know, are we as simple and as unfair as some people are perceived as beautiful and some people are perceived as not beautiful. Yeah, some people are perceived as get into the deep elements of the caring life force. Some people are perceived as honest and some people are perceived as not honest. Some people are perceived as deserving of trust and some people are perceived as not deserving of trust. They're really fundamental things, and they're things that our three tools for truth, transparency, script lines, and straight messages are intended to address. But just to go back and stay with what we have taught previously on the forum, as some of you might remember, but to go back to the concept of self-identity, as Dave developed it, my self-identity is how other people see me. And he presented that in the context of attraction to hurt and callousy, from my memory. I think there's a great deal of David's work, and I don't think it's unusual. I think it happens in a whole lot of spheres of life and a whole lot of intellectual and professional contributions. Sometimes some people have much, much more than they realize they have. And I think David's one of those people. There's the other side of that. Some people believe they have a great deal more than in fact they have. And of course, the classic way of saying that is the emperor has no clothes. The emperor believes he is full of wisdom and power, and is wearing royal robes, but walks down the street and, you know, to the people who are looking at him, he's naked. So the emperor has no clothes is someone who thinks he's got a great deal more than in fact he has. Some people don't know that they are offering a great deal. I think that's true of Shakespeare. I think it's true of often things that involve thought that is not tangible. You know, intellectual aspirations can be presented in books, but even presented in books, they don't have the, how can I put it? They don't have the immediate tangibility of, say, someone who produces art or music. You know, someone who produces art or music, it is there. Someone who produces thought or literature or poetry, it doesn't have the same presence, okay? So I think a Van Gogh or a Rembrandt can look at all their paintings and say, yeah, I did that. So don't have quite the same struggle to understand their contribution as someone who's producing thought, which essentially is what David produced. That is sort of, to me, necessary background to presenting his concept of self-identity, because I think it is extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily deep and practical at the same time. So what my self-identity is your perceptions of me. It is simply that simple. Self-identity is other people's perceptions of us. And then he took it a step further, is other people's perceptions of us that can have a knowledge of us that we cannot have ourselves. So I can't claim to directly know my self-identity. I can only know my self-identity through other people giving me feedback. That's how the whole Pellin concept of feedback and passive listening to feedback, and how feedback is such a good idea, you know, how rewarding it can be, and at the same time how difficult it can be. That's really all built on his concept of self-identity. One of the ways to see self-identity, and as I think I've said here in other occasions, it sort of changes some of my presentation of self-identity, changes with the technological change that, because of Zoom and social media and things that relate to the technological communication revolution over the last 30 years, mean that we are more familiar with our image than we would have been at one time, okay? I used to, right at the beginning, I used to say, you know, if there was a recording, a video recording of a group of people who don't know each other but have just met in a room together, or in a railway carriage, sharing a railway carriage together, we would be, even after about 5 minutes, we'd be more familiar with everyone else there than with ourselves, okay? And I think there's a strange thing about Zoom, which I want to address fairly soon, although I'm a bit shy to. And this, I think this is a self-identity example. And there was quite a long, I might have said this here before, so bear with me if it's a repetition. But there's a long article in a serious newspaper recently, and I think it was called something like Zoom shock. So, you know, we're all on Zoom together and we're really familiar with that. And even the Peter Fleming Forums are up to a very high number now. So, you know, we've done this Zoom stuff for a long time. But if all of us were all of a sudden, you know, like in Star Trek, transported so we could all be in one room together. So we're standing together in a room, okay? I think we'd be really surprised. And I think one of the reasons I'm a little bit almost nervous about this, but I know if that occurred, I think a lot of people would say to me, oh, I didn't know you were short. And that touches off some, yeah, you know, fairly deep memory links about being the smallest kid in the class. I was always the smallest kid in the class. So on Zoom, you don't get a sense of someone's height. You almost don't get a sense of their weight. You don't get a sense of how they move. It's an odd, and I think that's an example. I think that's an example of self-identity, that, you know, we don't know how other people are going to perceive us in a group of people, rather than, and you know, I guess the colloquial expression, a bunch of talking heads, you know, from here up. That's all we have of each other. So, self-identity, so if I can bring that definition and description down a bit clearer. Self-identity is how other people perceive us. It's about how other people perceive our ways of communicating, our physical presence, our characteristics and idiosyncrasies. And we cannot know that directly. It's a part of ourselves that we are a stranger to. And it is at times, I think, quite shocking. You know, at times it can be quite pleasing. Oh, I didn't know other people thought I was pretty. No, you know, a girl had trouble with her body image, and I better be careful about how I'm using that first person pronoun. I'm taking that on, Nikki. Take two. You know, yeah, a teenage girl might be really pleased that, you know, she sort of struggled with her image of herself, but her self-identity as other people are seeing her as really pretty. That can happen. In fact, that is a good example of some of the, they're not quite paradoxes, but almost some of the mysteries, I think, maybe I'll try that word, in self-identity. Some of it we can only not know, but we need not to know. Because self-identity is the part of ourselves that we can't consciously and with some sort of security and certainty know. Outside, yeah, people who are wise and go around consciously being wise run the risk of being a bore. Someone who is very efficient, even this is an example that's a little bit more complex in terms of the conscious and the unconscious. But someone who goes around being efficient, someone who's really efficient, okay, they're really good at it. You know, the stuff is there, they're on time, you know, the house is organized, you know, for vacations, they've always got a plan, and they've got a plan B if something goes wrong on the vacation. Some people are just good at that. But it needs to be carried lightly. If someone is sort of conscious of how efficient they are and projects that consciousness to the world, they'll come across as a control freak. So, I mean, that's almost a place where we need not to know about ourselves, because then the efficiency and the sense of control is held lightly, and people just have the feeling, oh, you know, it's so nice to be around Harriet, or it's so nice to be in Harriet's house because everything just runs smoothly. And yet if Harriet is conscious that she is making everything run smoothly and wants a direct recognition of that part of her contribution, it'll come across, it'll be a tunnel, be a tunnel. And the other one is beauty, someone who is beautiful and is conscious of being beautiful, man or woman, will lose something. It'll have a hardness to it that if the person is not conscious of their beauty, it will, it'll be deeper. That's simple. So that self-identity, in a minute, I want to link it to our tools for truth. Because self-identity is one of those things, like, funny metaphor, but an old car that's running really well. Don't mess with it. Don't take it apart. It's running well. And that could be true of friendship. If it's going well, you don't have to analyze why it's going well. And if you do analyze why it's going well, it can be destructive. But if things are going wrong, if the car feels like, if the car starts making scary noises, then we need to, or if a friendship is going wrong, or a marriage is going wrong, or a work situation is going wrong, then that which is unconscious and lies in the self-identity side of things needs to be made conscious. From what's wrong with the car to if a friendship is going wrong, well, what am I doing to make you angry? What am I doing to hurt you? If I'm doing things that make you angry and hurt you, I need to know what they are. And it might be quite hard for me to face what they are. And I think there you can see how historically self-identity has underpinned so much of what we do. But if we took the concept of self-identity as something that we can, hone down, play with, make really clear, which I have in another place, which I'm not going to mention yet. I guess I'm with Dave at the moment. This is something that could be really useful for kids, really useful for teenagers. And the way I've got that in Pellin, because I developed self-identity, which is always a bit hard to teach and a bit hard for people to grasp. So I came up with what I called the persona gap. And what the persona gap is the difference or the gap between my perception of myself and your perception of me. Let me try and give something. I was going into a sort of cute bit that I don't want to go into. But yes, if I perceive myself, and this is where I can use the first person, if I perceive myself as lacking confidence and struggling because of that lack of confidence to get my work across, that's my perception of myself. And if other people's perception of me is you're coming across confident and clear, I need to take that in. That's the equivalent of the teenage girl who thinks she's unattractive and other people perceive her as pretty. So, and in a moment, I want to sort of look at how self-identity relates to those tools of truth that I talked about. But I just want to stay with self-identity at the moment. Is there any, could you both make some comments or ask some questions?
It seems pretty clear what you're saying. I'm interested to hear in terms of self-identity. You know, I have to admit this kind of area makes me very uncomfortable because particularly if you're, I think it's really hard when you're, you know, overweight, a woman, older, you know, and different in a lot, and have like very different ideas about life and religion too. There's a certain, I think that you, and you see this, and I, you know, and there's other minorities too. You see this where you're worried about what people think because you assume it's because there's lots of prejudices that you have to deal with that you kind of know, and the other, and separating that out between but I guess you would get the feedback from people you trusted, and that wasn't an issue from, although sometimes and the other, I'm a little confused in terms of self-identity versus, which is right. I mean, I could see if you come across as confident and clear, but inside you're still nervous, which is true, you know. I mean, they're both are, you know, what you see inside, and I mean, they're different views. I mean, and sorry to bring in astrology, but astrology, there's actually you know, your outside faces, there's a point and there's a chart, and it's you can see the things that are on, you can actually see the parts that are more surface, the things that you present. But it also depends on your relationship with people. You'll present, you know, you have a face that you present with strangers, which might be different from how you are with close friends. So I don't know. Those are just sort of because you asked.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had some thoughts.
Yeah, Nikki.
If you want me to make some comments, just to do with, I can't remember what words you said, but you were saying something about that made me think of how we move in the world, how our body moves, and that just really struck me as a thing, perhaps that we really don't know, that something that other people will see really clearly, and that we really don't know.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of two different things crossed my mind about that. Well, one was that guy in Italy, that he and I had this like really intensive psychological connection, like for those few years, every time I saw him there. And then I didn't go for years. And then, so what was interesting, when I suddenly went in 2009 and went to find him, if I'd been forced to just walk straight up to him and look at his face, I would not have recognized him at all.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I can't express how much I would not have recognized him. But I happened to walk around where he was and see him from the side, moving, picking up these objects that he was selling, moving around. And it was just, that's what absolutely was gobsmacking, that I hadn't been aware of before when I used to see him there before. Just the precision, you know, nobody else standing there doing those same things would have looked exactly like that by a million miles, right?
Yeah.
So I totally knew him by his body movements as he moved around that space, but would not have recognized his face at all. So that was that thing that was very interesting to me. And then this other thought I had is about people who are in the public eye, and you can just tell, so they're in the public eye. I'm not, thank goodness, so I don't have to think about it, but you can see immediately on the screen who feels self-conscious and who doesn't.
Yeah.
And so that made me think of, the difference between, you have actors and actresses. So that people who chose to be in the public eye, they just move in a way that is really relaxed and comfortable. And I've sometimes thought of it, when you get these young actresses on the red carpet and the way they move around the red carpet, or the way they stand when you see a photo of them, that they look great, but if you really thought about it, it's like if you imagined yourself trying to stand in that position or to move in that way, you just absolutely wouldn't. It would be really abnormal, how they must think about how to position their feet so that their legs are in the right place and all that, so that they don't ever look chunky or clunky, like the rest of us do in normal life. And so it just made me think of the difference. So between people who choose that, and so they always look really comfortable with these really artificial body movements they have to make whilst being watched and photographed by 1,000 people all at once. And they're just standing there smiling. I mean, what must they have in their heads to be focused on, to keep totally fixated on what do I look like at this minute? Must be.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly contrasted that with the royal family, who actually none of them have come to that for that reason. They've either married it or been born to it, but it's not that they had a personality that drew them to want to have to stand around looking elegant. And so a lot of them don't, and then you get these comments lately of Harry and Meghan shown together and analysed of, oh, he looks insecure compared to her. It's like, well, he's just a bloke and she's an actress. What do you think?
Yeah.
So she's just thinking about how to look good, and he's a normal person, but with loads of other shit in his head that the rest of us haven't got. Anyway, those were my thoughts that I had when you were
No,
talking.
I appreciate them, because I think how we move, and also something about our voice. And this is a long time ago, but a young man called Teddy Mahood, who I guess was the first person I worked with. I was his counselor when he was in prison. Sort of Teddy, I could almost say Teddy was the reason I'm still in the work, almost. It's pretty important. And years later, I'd pick up the phone and someone say, "Hi, Peter." And I knew it was Teddy, okay? I just knew it was Teddy. I don't quite, there's something about that fits into self-identity. I'm not quite sure where. But there is something about, and there's another thing about voices I know, and I learned this myself when I was first setting up Pellin and going on the road and doing lots of workshops and flying a lot, different places. Hardly anyone can keep tiredness out of their voice, okay? And I knew I had to be really careful, because I could feel I was doing all right, but my voice could come across really tired, because I was. So, yeah, I think movement and voice have have a lot about self-identity. I want to go back to the title of this quickly, because I should have said this earlier before I said truth is a struggle and secrets are a burden. What this part of self-identity is about is how we develop trust or not, okay? And that really works on an unconscious, subliminal level. I want to go back to the bit you were saying, Nikki, about people in the public eye, okay? And there's an expression, someone who's comfortable in their own skin. The bit about who's self-conscious and who's not self-conscious, that bit. I think that, and as, as you'll remember, in English terms, and certainly Australian terms, I'm a Republican. And a Republican means someone who doesn't like the royal family. I want to refer a republic than a royalty. So I'm a Republican in that sense. But there's something about, so I'm saying that's my bias. My bias is against royalty. But there's something about how Queen Elizabeth carries herself. And, particularly as the way everything now can be photographed, and because you were saying, thousands of people will see it, Nikki. It's not thousands of people anymore, is it? As millions of people are going to see it. And how, she's this tiny elderly woman, often surrounded by very big men. Not only they're big, they're in uniforms and they've got tall hats, which makes her look even shorter. And yet she sort of carries herself with, this is who I am. And probably it could be said that she's always done that. And it's certainly something about her power. I personally think Prince Charles always looked self-conscious. I feel sorry for him. I don't like him, but I feel sorry for him. But
can I comment about that?
Yes, please. Yes.
Because that's exactly right, isn't it? Our self-identity, who we are. Yeah, he had a dad who did him in. And so he's this dithering, insecure person who's got this cufflink fiddling security little habit and self-effacing, all of that, which of course his pompous younger brother hasn't, because he was mummy's favourite apparently, and he's this arrogant, opposite kind of person.
Creep.
And well, exactly. And it had crossed my mind as well when I was thinking, earlier when I was thinking about actresses versus the royals, when I was sort of thinking of the younger ones, but I'd forgotten that the Queen herself had popped into my head as well, and that she's always just walked around like that. And as it happens, I watched part of a program last night about her and her sister. And so turns out, I didn't know the details before, but so the abdication was when Elizabeth was 11. And it said about how her life changed from that moment. They were just training her from that moment. So it makes complete sense. She sort of, up until the age of 11, she was just completely free, without those pressures, right? So, and then it's very formative, isn't it, to get beyond 10. And then she was coached. So no wonder she's like that.
Cynthia.
Well, that's the thing, and that's why I guess I'm kind of very uncomfortable with the whole. I mean, I know this is big and this goes all back to David Pellin, but calling something your self-identity, how other people perceive you, it almost makes that seem more important to the truth than who you are inside. And to me, that just, you can manipulate how people, if you're smart and you're an actress and you've learned, you can learn things to. I mean, and con artists do it very well. I mean, and learn things to manipulate how other people see you, but it's much, much harder to change who you are deep inside. And yes, there are some people who they're, I mean, different people are different. Like one thing, actually valuable feedback that I've gotten, not just recently, but before, is that people think I can be, for an example, I can be in a complete low, very deep low, and still people will perceive me as cheerful and happy. And I mean, it's happened since I was a child. And I mean, we're I'd be facing horrible things at home, and but she seems so happy, know. And it's, I mean, and what's the truth? Is the truth that I'm, and some of it's not an act. I mean, some of it's an act, some of it's not even an act, really. It's something, because I learned that, if I'm showing I'm upset, I'm really, really upset. I mean, I'm usually, the degree is much higher than I really am. But what, I mean, if you think about that as truth, what's the truth? Yes, there, and yes, I guess that's a big persona gap, and it's something that, I need to find some way to deal with, because it also means I don't tend to get sympathy and support when I need it. But even if I'm telling people, because my body doesn't reflect what's going on, but it's just that whole thing. What's truth? I mean, is the truth what's on the outside, or what's on the inside? And or like, again, I'll just use a personal, I'm hard to get to know. I know I'm hard to get to know. There's been reasons for it. And there was a time when I was in high school that I was in drama, and, and I did, you do check off. And even as a lawyer, you need to know how you're going to be perceived by the judge. But, there's just so much you can manipulate if you're paying attention to other people's perception. If you're good at it, I've actually not. I mean, what I do is very unconscious. I mean, I don't want to get into all the reasons. I mean, it was a survival tool, I'm sure. But, so I know I'm kind of going, I don't know if my question makes sense.
Keep going. It's really important. I'll say in a minute why it's important, because I saw it. Go on.
Yeah. No, I think I'm just going to, I think I'm starting to repeat myself and just doing more examples. I think I'm finished with the main point.
Yeah. I think the main point is really important, and the bit, because it's dark outside, right? And, a few weeks ago at this time of day, it was light. So it's, I don't know, it's a bit more serious or something. I can't quite get the word. But the fact that it's only the three of us, okay, right now, gives me, this is sort of slightly off topic, okay, but I think it's important, and I guess I want your comment on it, Nikki. It gives me room, because you've probably experienced it, but Cynthia, but not as much as it used to be. It used to be a bit chronic. Me being sort of self-defensive, particularly if I was sort of attacked a bit, well, that doesn't fit with Freud or something or other. And I don't think I'm as defensive as I used to be. But because there's just the three of us, I can take in the bit you said, that the label's not so good, because it seems to diminish what we believe of ourselves from the inside, which in a sense what we're talking about, because somehow or other the Queen believes of herself on the inside. You know, her husband has recently died, and she's going around smiling. And I saw a report that said someone asked her about it. She said, well, Philip and I agreed that whoever went first, the other one was just going to get on with things and be happy about it. You know, so I'm not apologizing for my smile, even though I've recently lost my husband. And yeah, I think there's some more, you know, like I changed the life forces. I think there's something more I need to change around this. And because if I say the persona gap is the difference between my perception of myself and your perception of me, I could still write very strongly about the importance of my perception of myself. You weren't there, but one of the things I said, which I think people liked, and someone was there who'd never done Pellin before. Okay, someone was at the virtual Pellin Italy who had never done Pellin before. So I sort of wanted to get across, and I said, Pellin's like an obscure poet who's very good, but not well known. Okay. And you might like to comment on that if you could, Nikki, in a minute. And I was pleased with that. And that's taking not your perception of me, but my perception of myself. You know, I've sort of created this thing in a rather hostile environment. And yeah, so I think you're absolutely right about the articulation of it. It needs to be rewritten a bit. And, you know, I've always got the sort of struggle that it's not competitive and it's not adoration, but it's probably closer to adoration than competition. And that is, you know, it's always easier to make Dave's work more important than my work. Hi, Cease.
Sorry I'm late. Our Quaker meeting went a lot longer today.
That's okay. That's okay. The presentation I did earlier, okay, this proves your point, Cynthia. I think was pretty good, so I'd like to suggest you listen to it. Sort of slightly newish material, new way of looking at it. And what we're doing now is looking at, you know, how we talk about the difference between our perceptions of ourselves and other people's perceptions of us, which I now call the persona gap, but go back to the beginning. It was the self-identity feedback exercise, you know, that we used to do at Pellin. You want to come in there, Nikki? All of that?
Well, I've got something that's not about that, but it's a bit, I had a thought coming off something Cynthia said that was a bit of a jump. Oh, I guess to do with that it's not self-identity. Anyway, the jump was suddenly realizing, of course, last time, you know, when I learned this material and last time since I've thought of it, in the intervening years, I encountered this, what I call psychopathic con woman, right? So when I think of how, like, astonishingly good she looked,
yeah,
which was her means of conning you. I mean, just good, competent, and lovely, like a lovely person. And, you know, I very quickly, once I was in her grasp, came to understand she's a psychopath. That's all. That's her camouflage kind of thing. There's a monster underneath, really. And what was I going to say about that? That yeah, I guess it's an extreme kind of. If our self-identity is actually how other people see us. Well, other people see her, because a couple of years later, I got her in front of a judge, and I watched the judge be progressively mesmerized by her, and he didn't see it at all. And I got the money back, everybody, by the way. But so but then that's a psychopath. So I guess it would make sense that would be kind of the opposite way around to a normal person. That how she gets perceived is not how she is at all. She just uses that for these hurtful. She was driven to just be hurtful, not just to. She wasn't just a casual rip you off for money. It was absolutely driven to be hurtful. As the ripping you off for money was sort of just the means by which she could be hurtful. Really. So what am I trying to say? Yeah. So I don't quite know. It's like, oh, I don't know. Did she understand that she is a really, really thoroughly, deeply nasty person? I don't know. I'll leave it there.
Well, I think that is something that these tools can be used for, because, I started with this. It's about trust, but we're getting at trust sort of slowly. But it's also about truth. And the statement I started with was, truth is a struggle and secrets are a burden. How do we handle that? And I guess I'm gonna run the theme of trust for 2 or 3 weeks, because it's a big one. We spend the rest of the year on it. It's a sufficiently big one. And just bring it down, just sort of lesson plan, Cynthia. Bring it down to, how do the tools of truth, transparency, script lines, and trait messages, how do they relate to the building of trust? And I think I can say that they give us a shot. They give us a shot at it, because transparency is being clear about who I am. Transparency might be also clear about, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. I'm not going to tell you very much at all, but I'm transparent about that. Script lines sort of overlap there, but the purpose of script lines is to be authentic in the world and have a humanity with people we're working with or with whom we're trying to help. Script lines, while overlap with transparency, are different, because the script line is to protect me. Script line is to protect me from attack, okay? Because, the flip side of transparency, in Pellin, it's very clear, it's almost technical. If someone's got low goodwill, another way of looking at that, if someone's communication strata is low, if you're transparent with them, they will not be able to resist the temptation of using their knowledge of you against you. And that can even be people who love us, okay? And I think that gets, so script lines have very much the point of, we have the right to protect ourselves. No, we have the right to protect ourselves. We have the right to privacy. And then straight messages are coming at the same issues of truth in a different way. I guess straight messages sort of carry a certain responsibility, okay? I've got a responsibility to tell you, you know, clearly what I believe about something or what I feel about something, or and I guess within straight messages, which, as you know, some of this is a work in progress, and straight messages are a work in progress, but straight messages are almost most clear in what they are not, which is mixed messages. You know, straight messages is almost a way of saying mixed messages are a really bad idea. And you know, if I go back to teenagers, you know, straight messages can be a really, really good idea. And so could script lines, okay? I mean, because, you know, I'm not of the social media generation, but when you were speaking, Nikki, about the, you know, celebrities on the red carpet, and you were saying, well, you know, they're being seen by thousands of people, and even I could pick up that no, they're being seen by millions of people. So I think there's a part of, and I think there's a part of trust that is about sort of being clear, even if the clarity is, you know, how would you deliver this? But even if the clarity is, I don't want to be that close to you, or the clarity is, I don't want to know that much about you, or the clarity is, I don't want you to know that much about me. I mean, the challenge would be, okay, how do you deliver a straight message about that? And I guess the script line part of that, that's where I started off saying, but the tools which I've talked about before, they're robust, detailed, and accurate. There's sort of detail in this, you know, it's not, oh, be authentic in the world. No, we've got a way of looking at it more direct, in more detail. So, yeah, and I guess that all the things I just said, I don't want to be that close to you. I don't want to know that much about you. I don't want you to know that much about me. I get, you know, we could start with experimenting with a script line that'd be about privacy, or that'd be about, I don't know, off the top of my head, you know, I've got a very full life. I live on my own, but I'm not engaging with people that much. You know, that, and then we go over, you know, with, use that word again, with people we trust, we can go over the script line. Okay, how do you get that across? But in fact, we're saying, you know, I don't want to have very much to do with you, or tell you much about me. You know, cease.
Yeah, I have a question, because I have a friend. It plays into this. She's a very nice person, but she tells me, not just me, but other people too much. I don't dislike her, but she'll just tell me how some simple thing, and she'll start telling me how she got to that thought and what she thought she shouldn't say, or what she should. I mean, it rambles on for quite a while, and then she'll like put her, I know I'm acting, she'll say, I know I'm acting stupid, or you can't follow me, or, you know, I don't say, yeah, that's kind of what you're doing. But, but she's a very sweet person, very artistic, very imaginative, but wow, getting a a straight answer is really difficult. I don't know if you have any thoughts on if that fits into what you're talking about now. I don't want to say I don't like you or anything.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I
Absolutely.
just need to call back in a minute, by the way. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Nikki. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Yeah, no, that absolutely fits with what we're talking here today. In a particular way, just to be sort of technical, because I'm saying the tools are robust, detailed, and accurate, in particular, that's sort of about communication strata. But, something about straight messages, communication strata, and I guess it's an overlap. Well, it's all three of them, isn't it? And transparency, the truth and straight messages, you don't want this, And then the script line is, how do you get that across? And I think that's a place where both script line, well, all three of them, but particularly script lines and straight messages are sort of challenged, because how am I truthful about this? To use the word I don't particularly like, authentic or authenticity, and that probably means just being snobbish, because I think it's almost too general. But using it here, how do you get a message across that is not hurtful? That's the struggle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if it was sort of flipped, and if it was someone who was sort of inviting you to help them to share more, okay, it'd be very different. But the way you present it, that's a real tough one. And I think the challenge of the truth tools, how can I be truthful to myself in this and not be hurtful to the other person?
Yeah.
And I think it's, okay. So I think script line is sort of useful just because it's a tool. Okay, how could I come, and straight messages, okay, how could I come up with a statement that is going to be saying, hypothetically, Betty, I don't want that much detail, or Betty, I'd like you to ask me about me before you tell me about you. How do you get that across without being hurtful?
Can I ask something?
Yeah, Nikki.
I think, didn't you say, Cease, that at the end, or some part of it, she says something, the self-effacing, sort of indicating she knows she goes on a bit, or something like that?
Yes.
So I'm thinking, sorry?
Yes, you're right.
So I wonder if you prepared in advance, but start with that bit, whatever her words are, those self-effacing, so she doesn't need the feedback that she does it. She knows she does it, but she just can't stop doing it. But she is indicating, I feel self-conscious about the fact I do this flipping thing. So if you started with, first of all, be in touch with your caring life force. Once you're ready to, once you see her coming, go, is this the day I'm going to do this? Get in quick with, Betty, you've said, I've been thinking, but yes, show you've been thinking. I've been thinking, Betty, about how you say that when you talk, you blah, blah, whatever her words are for it. So then you've grasped the nettle, and then you go, because she wants to stop. That's the indicator she wants, I think, unless she just says that and able to get away with keep doing it. I don't know. But then you can say that.
No, I think you're right that she wants to.
Okay, right. So interpret it as she's asking you for help to stop doing it. So then name it in the words she uses, and then say, so I wonder, would you like me to try and help you to stop? Well, you know, when you're talking, I could, if you didn't mind, if I could just interject a little bit and help you to get to the point. What would that be like? Put it to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she'll start doing the thing, and then you're not being cruel because you have asked permission, and then you just interrupt and say, so just get to the point about that bit, Betty, and then keep saying that as she.
Yeah, I think that I like that. I wonder if you'd mind if I could interject then and try to get you back on path, because I really want to know what you have to say. And when you go off track of talking about you don't like your way your mind works or whatever it is, that kind of throws us off. So I'd like to keep it. I want to hear what you have to say, most importantly, something like that.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, whatever you think would work, because you're the one who knows her. But it's about grasping it before she starts with a conversation, because then you've already lost it. It's like, oh no, now there's no way I can be doing anything but being the bad guy. But if you get in first and use her words about the way that she perceives it negatively, and then
I think that sounds like a good, because what it does when she goes off on that, it really turns me off. You know, it makes me I don't want to step on something that's going to trigger that response. You know, oh, I just go off on the crazy, I just go off on all these.
Right. So that's the thing that she calls it. So you start with, it's like, oh, you know, Betty, how you say you just go off on these things. Well, I've been thinking about it. So tell her you've been thinking about it.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, Cease is invested enough to think about me.
That's good.
Nikki, Cynthia is trying to say something.
Okay.
That you can't see.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Well, as somebody who does this, and I know I do it, and I stop myself and I listen to myself talk and I say, oh God, Cindy, stop. And I just keep doing it more and more. I think for me, and I'm wondering, I mean, for me, it's because I'm anxious. And I do it more, the more anxious I am, the more I do it. And in fact, somebody correcting me and trying to help is only going to make it worse, because then I'm waiting for the correction, but I think, but I don't know this person and stuff, but I'm wondering, I know something that would help me if I was doing that. If somebody just say, yeah, I know you do. If somebody just asked me, so what's going on inside? What's happening? Just be very, I don't know, but yeah, just, ask, because it's obviously she knows she does it. She doesn't like she's doing it, probably, if she's being sincere. Ask, maybe just, it might get her going again, but, ask her, so what's going on? What's going on? And, and hopefully that doesn't spring something, but.
I think that's great to ask her what she thinks would help her, and or what help would she want from me. Maybe she doesn't want any help from me, but so that's another thing to find out if she.
Can I say something, even though I didn't hear the situation? Just going off what Peter said, I'd like to make a general point about hard feedback, and that when I was working in the mental health clinic with people with so-called Axis 1 disorders, who were very discouraged, because I was the first person that brought the idea of the recovery model into that setting. And they were used to their diagnosis being changed and it being a life sentence and medication being, all that stuff. So I was good at noticing a minuscule change for the better. So I always began any hard feedback with, I've noticed you've done this or you've done that. And, I started with a bit of progress or just some kind of, I think Peter the other day mentioned the word appreciation, started with something like that. And it really helps it go down, you know, like a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. It's quite amazing. I was able to say quite tough things to people who weren't used to getting any feedback at all because they were used to being treated as hopeless. And it was growth thing.
Yeah.
And then I'd just like to say, the bit I heard when I came in was Peter saying, I'd like you to ask me about me before you tell me about you. Now, that was my thing, right? My thing when I was younger, hope it's not as bad now, is I just go in to take up the space and get the attention. And didn't really know till after Pellin that I was doing that. And I was thinking that I wanted to change that for a long time before I was able to change it. And I was thinking if somebody said something like, you know, what about trying an experiment? Because I'd really like you to ask me about me before you tell me about you. And they're repressing, saying, launch into telling me about you. You know, they're not saying that bit. And because I wanted to change so much, like Cynthia was saying, that would have helped me. I would have said, oh, yeah, okay. Because when you kind of obsessively talk about yourself, I don't really know why I do.
The Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences has today decided to award.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say now. But when you know, it's just really easy to want to change and not notice what would help change. Not notice. I don't know for sure that this happened at the time, but I think I probably didn't notice that I didn't ask people about them. And just somebody saying that gives me a tool that even if I'm self-conscious when I first started doing it, I can say, well, how are you? Like some people do that so easily and I still don't do it easily, but I can do it now. Anyway, I don't know how relevant that is because I didn't hear the situation, but I wanted to just throw that in.
Thank you.
Yeah, just commenting on that. And, you know, going back to trust, which I also, as I said earlier, Mary, I want to run over a few weeks. And it's a big one. You know, trust is a big one. It's the same as truth is a big one. But I think one of the things, take your situation, Cease, I think one of the things that the tools can do, and as I said at the beginning, they're robust, detailed, and can produce accuracy. At least I've got the challenge. At least I'm sort of facing the challenge. I don't think, no, I'm not necessarily saying this will work for everyone. Obviously, I like the Pellin tools. But at least I've got a challenge. How am I going to say that? Okay. Can I find a way to say it? So so instead of, well, you know, my friend Bob irritates me because he always talks about himself and always changes the subject to be talking about himself. At least, so I've got the challenge. How can I say something to Bob about that rather than, well, Bob just changes the subject, so it's talking about him instead of where we started off talking about me. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it very clearly. So I'm taking the challenge back on me rather than in friendship or in professional circles, you know, resistant client, right? Rather than putting the label on them. So I think one of the ways these are tools for truth, and I think they can help with the development of trust, is I'm taking the challenge back on me. I mean, my first, before I met Dave Pellin or before I met Fritz Perls, even before I knew who Carl Rogers was. I mean, my very, very early days, my first sort of, I think, you know, my own sort of perception was, well, they were called trainees in this particular correctional institution, okay? You know, it's so easy to put a label on a trainee, resistant, or it was a phrase in a movie at that time with, I think, with Michael Caine in it, unsuitable for treatment, okay? And there was another way of saying it, but it was a clear thing, you know, we are not going to put resources into that person. That was the consequence of that label. And, you know, character disorder gets close to that. Psychopath gets close to that in the correctional situation. And I had the thought, wait a minute, maybe we should fall it back on us. Where are we that we don't know how to help that person yet? Okay.
I'm getting, what's coming through to me is I need to change in this relationship rather than trying to get her to change her behavior.
Yes, yes.
That's I, like, she'll start in and she's very sweet and it'll be, and how great I am and blah, 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 and everything, like, and I can never be like you, or, and all that stuff. And like, oh my God. So I
Go out, Pixie.
I'm sorry, what? So I need to figure out how I'm going to change my reaction to that, because I'll just say, oh no, let's you know, no, I'm not that. So I need to change my behavior because I'm always telling her how much I like her art and all this other stuff. But I need, but it's not up to me to change her behavior. I just think acceptance would be maybe just something.
It's interesting you said that, because Dave's definition of friendship is, I can't get the exact words, I haven't said it in, thought it in a long time. Anyway, Dave's definition of friendship was essentially a relationship within which no one has to change, okay? He had a better way of saying it than that, but that was essentially the spirit of it. You know, a friend is someone, a friend is someone you do not put the expectation of change on. Yeah, Mary.
I was thinking a bit earlier that, again, without having heard what happened, that the feeling when somebody is going on and you don't feeling participatory and you don't feel in control of the conversation is a kind of powerlessness within the conversation. And I think, you know, in line with what other people have been saying, to recognize that we can do something different in the situation is a move from powerlessness to empowerment or self-agency. So that, you know, I've experienced that with resentment, you know, with difficult situations in my life where I was doing something not 100% willingly, often to do with caregiving. And when I examined that if I wasn't doing it, what that would mean, it would mean that I wasn't true to myself, because I wanted to be honorable and dutiful and in the sense of doing what I thought was the right thing, kind of dutiful. And that helped me so much, because I thought, oh, I am choosing this thing that's hard for me. It's not being thrust upon me. I am choosing to do it. And in the recent example, which is like, first there were 3 and then there were 2, and I couldn't go to my own home, you know, to live. I saw it as couldn't because of this duty of honor. It's like completely turned on its head by me recognizing that I was choosing to do that right thing. And it's like a miracle. We created a little household of two where we communicate in ways that this other person has never communicated with anybody. Honestly, truly, it's just amazing. I kind of gauge what truthful things I can say about her friend who died and risked her being a bit upset. And I seem to get it right, you know, that she can respond or look a bit sad. And I just say truthfully about practical things we need, instead of all the unspokenness. She was the queen of unspokenness, just because she's very introvert. And I said last night how well I thought things were going in our little household, and I was happy and liking what was happening, which is like a huge change from whatever September the 20th was. And she just gave me a lovely smile. She's not a person that smiles a lot. So I'm reliving right in the middle of how change in perspective like revolutionizes things when you take it back on yourself, whether it's helping someone or saying, hang on a minute, I'm making that decision, not fate, you know. So it's exciting to me that it's that huge a change.
That's great.
Really. Okay, we have to end there. It's half the hour. We're going to continue this on Wednesday and then for a while, bring in the issues of trust more. But also, I think, going back to a point Cynthia made earlier on, that there's something about the articulation of it and the articulation of self-identity that it doesn't quite have enough balance with the importance of the positive perception we have of ourselves, or even the negative perception we have of ourselves. You know, I'm 88, it'd be a good idea to get to the gym, okay? So yeah, so they're sort of things we're going to be looking at over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming and joining us. If you weren't here at the beginning. And I'm in Norfolk in England, where it's very dark. Nikki.
And I'm in southwest London, also very dark.
Okay. Cease.
I'm in Tampa, Florida, where it's 2:30 in the afternoon, so there's some light out there.
Okay. Cynthia.
Cynthia, it's 1:30 here in Kankakee, Illinois, and it's very bright and sunny.
Okay, Mary.
I'm Mary. I'm in Rosary 2 Beach, and it's very bright and sunny. And I just like to comment that I love that definition of friendship. That's just really amazing. And I just want to let people know you can stop recording. It's